On the morning of September 3, 1943, a secret armistice was signed with the Allies at Fairfield Camp in Sicily. The armistice was publicly announced on the 8th of September. By then, the Allies were on the Italian mainland. British troops crossed the short distance from Sicily to the toe of Italy in Operation Baytown. Two more Allied landings took place on the 9th of September at Salerno and at Taranto. The Italian surrender meant that the Allied landings at Taranto took place unopposed, with the troops simply disembarking from warships at the docks, rather than assaulting the coastline. Once the signing of the armistice was announced on the 8th of September, German troops quickly disarmed the Italian forces and took over critical defensive positions in Operation Achse. This included Italian-occupied southeastern France and the Italian-controlled areas in the Balkans. The Allied armies continued to advance through Italy, despite increasing opposition from the Germans. By September 1943, the tide of war had irrevocably turned against the Axis powers in the Mediterranean. Following the fall of Sicily, the Italian government, now led by Marshal Pietro Badoglio, entered into clandestine negotiations with the Allies. On September 3rd, a secret armistice was signed at Fairfield Camp in Sicily, effectively ending Italy's participation as a German ally. However, the announcement was delayed until September 8th, by which time the Allies had already begun their landings on the Italian mainland. Operation Baytown saw British forces cross the Strait of Messina, landing on the toe of Italy. As we watch this colorized footage, we see the initial Allied disembarkations, a mix of caution and relief as the Italian resistance began to falter. The surrender changed the strategic landscape overnight, turning former allies into enemies and forcing the German high command to react with brutal speed to secure the peninsula. The German response was swift and merciless. Under the code name Operation Achse, or Axis, German troops moved to disarm their former Italian comrades and seize control of vital defensive positions. From the French Riviera to the Balkans, Italian units were surrounded and forced to surrender, with many soldiers facing execution or deportation to labor camps. Simultaneously, the Allies launched more ambitious landings. On September 9th, Operation Avalanche saw American and British forces land at Salerno, south of Naples. Unlike the unopposed landings at Taranto, the Salerno beachhead was met with fierce resistance from the German 16th Panzer Division. For several days, the fate of the invasion hung in the balance as German counterattacks nearly drove the Allies back into the sea. This phase of the campaign demonstrated that despite the Italian surrender, the road to Rome would be paved with blood and iron, as the Wehrmacht prepared to defend every ridge and valley of the Italian landscape. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, the German commander in the south, recognized the immense defensive potential of Italy's geography. The central spine of the Apennine Mountains, coupled with numerous rivers and deep valleys, created a natural fortress. Kesselring persuaded Hitler that a fighting withdrawal would buy precious time for the Reich. He ordered the construction of a series of formidable defensive lines across the peninsula. The Volturno and Barbara lines served as delaying positions, slowing the Allied advance toward the main prize, the Winter Line. These defenses were not just simple trenches. They were integrated networks of bunkers, minefields, and artillery positions carved into the mountainsides. The Allies, advancing through autumn rains and mounting casualties, found themselves stalled by a succession of swollen rivers and fortified heights, as the German defense became increasingly organized and tenacious. The centerpiece of the German defense was the Gustav Line, anchored by the historic monastery of Monte Cassino. Here, the Allied advance ground to a halt against some of the most difficult terrain of the war. From January to May 1944, 4 major offensives were launched to break the line. The fighting was characterized by brutal mountain warfare, where progress was measured in yards and at a terrible cost in lives. British, American, French, Polish, and Canadian corps were all thrown into the cauldron. The destruction of the Monte Cassino monastery by Allied bombers remains one of the most controversial events of the campaign, as it ultimately provided the German paratroopers with even better defensive positions among the ruins. The Winter Line proved that even with superior air and naval power, the rugged reality of the Italian front could turn a modern army back to the static, grinding attrition of the First World War. To break the stalemate at the Gustav Line, the Allies launched Operation Shingle, an amphibious landing at Anzio behind the German lines. Intended to destabilize the defense and open the road,